And when we look at how many women left the workforce, it was something like 2 million women left the workforce in 2020 out of the traditional labor workforce. That doesn't include women business owners. But I would estimate that we saw a similar percentage of women leave businesses because of the entrepreneurial poverty we all face, the entrepreneurial poverty of time. We don't have enough time. Our time is spread too thin. We're trying to do too many things all at the same time, and we don't have people we can outsource or delegate to. The entrepreneurial poverty of energy, the burnout. We're just exhausted. We've been going through this trauma cycle over the last 12 months that has just run us into the ground. And the entrepreneurial poverty of money, where only 12% of women-owned businesses are making six figures, and only 4% are making over $500,000, and only 2% are making $1 million or more. And when you compare it to small businesses as a whole, women's small businesses make up more than 44% of small businesses, but we bring in only 4% of total small business revenue. To me, the inequity is just glaring, and it tells me that women need to get some support in playing a bigger game and making a real impact.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Walker. As a former naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I align the intersection of personal performance, purpose, and innovative thinking in badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. Anthropology is the study and science of what makes an entrepreneur think, feel, and perform in a path compelled by a vision for helping others, solving problems, while building a life on your own terms. Together, we are exploring the health, mindset, and strategies that distinguish the world's best entrepreneurs. This is the Anthropology Podcast. Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. This is episode 221. I'm Dr. Megan Walker, former naturopathic doctor turned anthropologist, exploring the intersection of mindset, high performance health, and entrepreneurship. Today, I am joined by Racheal Cook. Racheal is a serial entrepreneur. She is the host of the absolutely popular Promote Yourself to CEO podcast. She is a best-selling author. And more than anything, she is this incredibly insightful entrepreneur. She is a mother of three. She's someone I could totally relate to. And we had this incredibly compelling conversation around what it takes to actually be able to build a significant business, a business in the upper 6-7 figures while working only 25 hours a week. And the reality is there's actually one single thing, one single decision you need to make. And we broke it all down in today's episode. I'm so excited for you to have the opportunity to hear from Racheal. She knows her stuff. She's on top of it, and she gets straight to the point. I promise your life will not be the same on the other side of this episode. Please join me in welcoming Racheal Cook. Racheal Cook, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dive in.
Well, I'm excited about this conversation. I remember when I came across your work and your podcast. Your podcast is called Promote Yourself to CEO. And I was like, let me dive into this woman, because I was sharing with you before we started this recording. I have a program called The Clinician CEO. I talk a lot about the fact that there's mechanics of being a CEO, but it's also a mindset. We have really so much that we are going to jump into today, including the unique position that women find themselves in with respect to entrepreneurship and leadership and a caregiver in their family. Before we do that, Racheal, can you give all of my listeners a little bit of a background in terms of who you are and why you are uniquely positioned to talk about these things today?
Yeah. So I finished my MBA in entrepreneurship and small business and did what most MBAs do, which is I went directly into consulting. And in the consulting world, anybody who's worked for whether it's one of the top level big consulting companies or a boutique consulting company, they will tell you the consulting world is very fast paced, and in the early 2000s was very much male dominated, working 80 to 100 hour weeks, hustle, etc. And so I burned out of that very quickly. And while I loved the actual work I was doing, what I couldn't handle was the toxic workplace. And I found myself at a position where I was hitting burnout really hard. I was actually always on the road because I was driving from location to location, client to client. And I had to pull off I-95 outside of Washington, D.C. because I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was the first panic attack I'd ever had. And so that started me on this whole journey of what do I really want and how do I really want to show up in my life? So I took a 3-month medical leave of absence from work. The panic attacks were that bad. I had to file for short-term disability. And I started going on this journey of, okay, what's going on here? I had to unpack what was happening in my health. And I found myself on a yoga mat. And that yoga mat led me to my teacher who had just opened a yoga studio in downtown Richmond, Virginia. And she said, Rache, I know you don't think you want to go back to the corporate life, but could you help me with my studio? I'm struggling and I don't really know what I should do. And I was like, yeah, great. Let me see your P&L. What are your KPIs? And she was like, whoa, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because she, like so many entrepreneurs, started her studio because she's passionate about yoga and she's an incredible yoga teacher, not because she understood finance or customer experience or sales or any of those things that really go into being the leader for your business. So that was kind of the first of many little light bulb moments I started to have where I realized at the time that I started my business in 2008, there were literally 5 search results for yoga business coach. And I was one of them. So I came in at the perfect time. But what happened for me is I started just working with yoga business owners because they were right in front of me and it was very referral based. And over time, it started expanding to holistic healthcare entrepreneurs and a lot of healing and helping entrepreneurs. Then the whole coaching world started exploding after about 2010. And so fast forward all this time, I've always just kind of responded in my business to whoever is in front of me and is saying, hey, can you help? So it's turned into really tapping into this passion for me of helping more women entrepreneurs break through that feast or famine cycle to create predictably profitable businesses, which I think the predictably profitable is key because most women-owned businesses are not very profitable. They aren't paying a great paycheck to the business owner. And we're just seeing a huge rise of burnout for women entrepreneurs. In fact, I'd say it's the number one reason why women quit their business is because of burnout. So I currently run the CEO Collective, where I help women entrepreneurs to build in all of these sustainable success strategies that they really need to be aware of as a CEO of their business. Because being the CEO isn't just about doing the work that you love to do. It's about being able to steer the ship of your business forward so that you can help more people without burning yourself out.
I love this core message because as you were writing this, or as you were saying what you were saying, I wrote down, helpers, I see you. Because I feel like there's this cohort of women who, when you get to the crux of it, they're like, I just want to help people. Like, enough with my KPIs and my business and my marketing and oh my gosh, like the selling. I just want to help people. And I really believe strongly that if women are going to be effective in helping people, which means restoring yourself, this notion of predictable profitability is something that we just need to unlock and demystify. I think it's all the limiting beliefs and the story we construct around this notion of what it means to be profitable that we need to unpack. And I'm wondering if we can actually start there, around this notion of predictable profitability, because in the absence of that piece, you're right. You are burning and you are spending your own health in order to help people, which has been a problem for women for eons. So let's talk about this predictability piece and how it actually is a protector of your health and energy.
Yeah. It's so interesting because the more I've gone through this journey and dug in it with all my clients, the more I realized that a lot of us start our businesses, like you said, because they want to help people. And when it comes time to actually sit down and structure their business, put together their business model, there's usually not a lot of understanding of the different opportunities available inside of your business model. So what I tend to see for a lot of my healing and helping entrepreneurs is that they start their business and their first instinct is to look around at what everyone else is doing. And what everyone else tends to be doing, especially for healing and helping entrepreneurs, is allowing people to buy 1 hour of their time at a time. So if they're a therapist, they're only getting, that session at a time. And then what's happening is not only are you selling that session and trying to get that person on the calendar for that session, but you're selling each following session. So you're never out of the sales cycle. You're always like crossing your fingers. What I see is they're crossing their fingers and hoping the client will say, well, let me get on your calendar next. But that's not what happens. The calendar is not going to get filled if you're waiting for your clients to lead themselves. We have to lead them and share our expertise and help them get on the calendar. So we can't wait for our clients to figure this out on their own. They are not the expert. They don't know how long they need to see you, whether it's for therapy or massage or nutrition or whatever you're helping them with. It's up to you to say, here's my program. Now, that program could be delivered one-on-one. It could be delivered in a group. It could be delivered online. It could be delivered in person. It could be delivered in a lot of different packages. But if you sit down and think about, like, where is my client coming to me? What are they struggling with? What are their desires, dreams, the results that they want? And really think about, what does it actually take for you to get them from point A to point B? Create a program around that. And stop selling 1 hour of your time at a time and instead say, hey, you're coming to me because you have chronic back pain? Great. Here's how I work with my chronic back pain patients. And it's going to take this frequency of seeing me. I'm going to give you these types of exercises. And here's what that package looks like. So you only sell once instead of having to sell again and again and again. And the huge pro I see for this, the shift in mindset from selling one-off sessions to selling a program or a package, is that we know, especially when it comes to healing, to helping, to coaching, that results don't happen in a singular session. They happen when there's commitment and when there's consistency. So we can't get the results we're looking for one session at a time. We can only get it when both of us have committed to show up consistently. So it's a huge pro for your client because they're getting the structure and the accountability and the support they need to actually get to the result they're looking for. And it's a huge perk for you as a business owner. Yeah, it's a huge perk for you as a business owner because let's say instead of selling an hour at $100, you can sell 10 hours at $1,000 and you're not constantly following up with your clients trying to get them back when they are falling off track and getting back where they were before they found you.
And as much as you hate selling, people hate being sold too. So if every session they come to, it turns into this whole sales cycle dance again about why you need that is just as uncomfortable for the people that you are trying to help. And I love that you said the word commitment there, Rachael, because I feel like we as the business owners have an opportunity to make a decision around where we're placing our commitment. Are we more committed to our fear of sales, or are we more committed to delivering outcomes to our client base? And as much as we have limiting beliefs and we can address mindset, I actually think it also starts with a choice. Which behavior pattern am I more committed to? Delivering outcomes to patients, which means I just need to take courageous action and have courageous conversations, or dancing around the fact that these things make me feel uncomfortable and I'm going to be more committed to my fear of sales. What role does mindset play in stepping into your role as a CEO?
Oh my gosh, it's all mindset. So I didn't used to lean on the word CEO because me coming from corporate, I used to have this vision of the CEO is wearing like a $3,000 suit. They drive a super expensive Mercedes-Benz and they have this multi-million-dollar house on the waterfront. You know, I had this idea of what that meant. And when I started working with women, I mean, me too. I'll take it. But I really don't care about the car, and you won't catch me in another suit. I mean, to be honest, I haven't worn high heels in a full suit since I left consulting, because it's just, no, you will not find me in that. But what I found is in 2018, I hosted this event I called the CEO Retreat. And it was the first time I'd used specifically the word CEO, calling in women CEOs. Instead of solopreneur, entrepreneur, business owner, I specifically wanted to call in a group of women who were ready to truly play at a higher level and who weren't just trying to, do what they needed to do just to bring home a salary. And that called in a whole different level of women. When I started hosting the CEO Retreat, I started seeing women who accepted their role in their business and were ready to build a team. They were ready to reach more people and not be limited by their time and their capacity. They wanted to build a business that was designed to serve more people. And you can't do that unless you've had the mindset shift of, oh, I don't need to be the only one who's delivering to my clients. I can hire people under me who can work with my clients, or I can choose different models to work with more people. That's a whole mindset shift from, oh, I'm the only one that can do it. And so my whole business is based around how many hours I have available in my calendar. And that was amazing for me because suddenly the conversations were more interesting. And what really got me at that point talking to these women is, this is where we can truly make a bigger impact. Like I said, when I started in corporate and consulting, I was the only woman in an office of 50 men. It was like a frat house. And me trying to do the work that I was really interested in and wanted to do, it was really hard. There were a lot of odds stacked against me. I have an 11-year-old daughter, an 11-year-old son. I have twins, boy-girl twins. And the thought that in 10 years, they'll both be out of college and starting their first jobs, and that my son would have more opportunities than my daughter, that he would get paid more for the same job than my daughter. That kind of stuff just makes me crazy. So when we started having the CEO Retreat and that turned into the CEO Collective, for me, it became, you know what? This is bigger than me and it's bigger than just my clients. It's about redefining the way that we work and the way that companies are built from the ground up, so that we can all create the companies that we wish we had jobs in when we were starting out. So that's a lot there. But it really gets me fired up because yeah.
It's true. This notion of, I had this conversation with one of my neighbors the other day, and she's got 4 kids. I've got 3 kids. And we were talking about how despite all the hard work kids are going to do in school and all the sports and all the academics and all the leadership stuff, there is going to remain this pay gap. There is going to remain these inherent challenges that our girls are going to face that our boys aren't necessarily going to face in the workplace. And there's conversations to be had and there's leaderships to be had in those traditional corporate settings around that, politics, all of that. There's also this opportunity for us as women to just be like, why don't we just create what we want? And that's the thing I love about entrepreneurship, is that I don't have to wait for anybody else to change. I just make my own utopia, my own version. I love that you shared that. And I think that's the opportunity for leadership here. If you don't like sales in a business as a helping, healing entrepreneur, that's okay. You just need to change the structure of your business. If you don't want to be having certain difficult conversations, that's okay. We have to look at how we're going to structure things differently. The opportunity and the relationship between entrepreneurship and leadership, I think, is this incredible opportunity for all of us to engage. But we're in this very unique time period, I think, right now for us to lead that.
Absolutely. And I think what has been happening in the last few years, it's interesting because businesses like yours and mine, we've been doing things online and leveraging all the tools and resources available to us. And we've been way ahead of the curve for a long time. And until this past year, a lot of people didn't understand why my business was structured the way that it is. And then suddenly COVID hit and the world has to go online and use Zoom and all these things. And I'm like, yep, I've been doing that for 10 years. So here's how we do it. What I am seeing is right now we're seeing this mass exodus of women from the workforce. And most of the statistics right now are coming from traditional jobs. They're not coming from small entrepreneurs. But it does affect women business owners. Some of the stats that really hit me last year were when they rolled out the Paycheck Protection Loan, 90% of women in minority-owned business were shut out of that program. Why is that? It's because, one, they didn't know how to get access to it. They didn't understand their financials. They didn't have a financial team who was there to advise them. And these are really important CEO skills that we have to either expand our knowledge base, or we need to say, hey, I just need someone who knows more than me, who's going to have my best interests at heart and be looking out for this type of stuff. Because if only 10% of women in minority-owned businesses got access to that money, that's not okay. Like, now we're at a huge competitive disadvantage. And when we look at how many women left the workforce, it was something like 2 million women left the workforce in 2020 out of the traditional labor workforce. That doesn't include women business owners. But I would estimate that we saw a similar percentage of women leave businesses because of the entrepreneurial poverty we all face, the entrepreneurial poverty of time. We don't have enough time. Our time is spread too thin. We're trying to do too many things all at the same time, and we don't have people we can outsource or delegate to. The entrepreneurial poverty of energy, the burnout. We're just exhausted. We've been going through this trauma cycle over the last 12 months that has just run us into the ground. And the entrepreneurial poverty of money, where only 12% of women-owned businesses are making six figures, and only 4% are making over $500,000, and only 2% are making $1 million or more. And when you compare it to small businesses as a whole, women's small businesses make up more than 44% of small businesses, but we bring in only 4% of total small business revenue. To me, the inequity is just glaring, and it tells me that women need to get some support in playing a bigger game and making a real impact. Because when we can step up and build multiple 6 or 7 figure businesses, this isn't just to be like, oh, I'm doing this because I want a flashy car. I drive a 5-year-old minivan with goldfish crackers ground into the carpet. I really don't care about having a flashy car. You'll never see me with a flashy car. I don't care about that. What I care about is the fact that I now have 12 women who work on my team, and they make incredible money, and none of them work more than 30 hours a week. And for them, this is a dream job. And that's impact. That's what we can all do. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It's awesome. And this is leadership in action. So there's 2 parts to this. One, I want you to share with us your week, because I saw I think it was on your Instagram, you're like, I work 25 hours a week. And I was like, girl, we are talking about that secret. Secondly, I wanted to understand big picture perspective. What are some of the benchmarks women need to be aiming towards if they want to move out of this business where they are spending all their time and all their energy and barely squeezing out enough to support themselves? What are some of the key things we should be aiming for? Is it you're going to have to hire a team? What are some of those core things we need to look at?
So I think I can answer both of these questions at the same time. So
great.
Because I'm a strategist, I tend to always think of the importance of context of the conversation, and also where you are at your specific stage of business and stage of life, because that context is important when you're listening to how someone did what they're doing, right? So when I started my business, I was just married. I had no debt from college. I had no personal debt. I didn't have a mortgage. I had saved a lot, because when you work in consulting and you make 6 figures, but you don't have a life, you don't spend anything. So I was able to start my business from a pretty solid place, right? My husband was working, so we could live off of his paycheck as a 7th grade English teacher. When I started my business, 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant, and then I discovered it was twins. So I had a real fast timeline for figuring out how I wanted to structure things. And I knew that if what burned me out in corporate was working every minute of the day, I needed to structure my calendar, and I needed to ask for help early on. There's nothing that gives clarity faster than having 2 newborn babies handed to you and then you're told, good luck. And you realize, okay, I need to pay myself at least $2,500 a month. And that means I actually have to make $5,000 a month, because by the time you add in taxes and everything else, I needed to make at least $5,000 a month to pay myself $2,500 a month. Oh, and there were newborn twins. So I knew I needed help. I needed childcare.
Right.
So my first big investments into my business were looking for where I needed help. I needed childcare. This is what happens when you're a twin mom, you meet all the other twin moms. So one of my really good friends also had twins, and we shared a babysitter. Between the two of us, we gave her a full-time job. And that helped me to find the time to work on my business. And I was committed to only working 25 hours a week and replacing my corporate salary the year they were born. And I did it. My coach at the time probably thought I was crazy because there weren't many women talking about having babies and starting businesses at the same time. But what I realized is if I could have childcare covered and I could have someone to manage the administrative, the customer service, the operations level things, that I could stay focused on marketing and I could stay focused on sales. And if I could stay most of my time in those areas, I would quickly fill my client docket. I started off doing one-on-one consulting, and I had a program. It was a 6-month program. The only way I would work consulting wise with somebody was starting at a 6-month engagement, because I knew I didn't want to just do one-off sessions. I was like, the only way for me to really get into their business, come up with a strategy, and then help them execute that strategy was a minimum 6-month commitment. And that is why I got off to such a fast start, because I knew that I needed to simplify as much as possible and I needed to stay focused on sales and marketing as much as possible. So my model calendar approach has evolved with me as I've gone, because each stage of business, things shift and your priorities, where you're spending your time shifts. But it really, for me, breaks down into a couple of things. So a model calendar is what I call kind of my ideal week. And I'm always updating it and tweaking it and evolving it. My team always knows what my model calendar is so they can support me in it. But I basically use time blocking in a very strategic way. Mondays are what I call my CEO days. This is where I have my CEO date with myself. I'm checking in on my 1-year plan. I'm checking in on our current quarter plan. I'm looking at all of our metrics and numbers. And then I'm checking in with my team to make sure everyone has what they need to move forward. We try to consolidate all the decision-making from the team into Mondays so that I'm not getting pulled into a million directions from the team the rest of the week. And I have my team meetings, team check-ins, and work with my operations manager, who really is like my right hand. She runs all the things behind the scenes for me. So that all happens on Mondays. I alternate client-facing weeks and marketing-facing weeks. So client weeks, I like to put all of my clients, if I have one-on-one clients, I have a very clear calendar SOP where on Tuesdays, they get scheduled 9 o'clock, 10:30, 12 o'clock, 1:30. And once they commit to work with me for 6 months or a year, they are booked out for the remainder of their contract so that we never have a missed time. And they're very clear that they can't reschedule. If they have to reschedule, then that reschedule is put at the very end of their contract agreement, because I can't mess with my model calendar. I don't mess with the system. And then I have time. Wednesdays is my no call day, because I'm a highly sensitive introvert. I need decompression time. So after I have back-to-back client calls, I usually need a day where I don't have calls so that I can do more creative stuff or work on content. Thursdays is my CEO collective day. That's when I show up live for that community, and I host group strategy and support calls that are just so fun for me. It's like Jeopardy for me. It's like just super fun. I love it. And then Fridays are off. Fridays are my flex day. And I've consolidated down to about 4 days a week right now, just because with all that's going on, my kids are home and we're homeschooling this year. So usually Fridays is my turn to take the kids, because my husband is a stay-at-home dad and he's been managing homeschool and kids for most of the week. On non-client weeks, Mondays are still CEO days. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are content days, because content drives my business model. Now, this might change. That's my marketing strategy I'm heavily invested in. It's what has proven to work the best for us. So I'm either recording my podcast, getting on other people's podcasts, writing copy, etc. All of that content marketing related activity is happening on Tuesdays and Wednesdays on non-client weeks. Thursdays are CEO collective days, and then Fridays are flex days where I'm off. And this kind of structure has been amazing. One, it does take time to get used to it because we're not used to holding boundaries with ourselves. We're not used to holding commitments or carving out time to be the way we need it to be. It takes so much practice. And it takes support. You'll notice, like, I didn't say, oh, I'm checking my email an hour a day. No, I spend probably 5 minutes a day checking email. And the only time I check it is when my assistant, Mackenzie, pops in Slack and says, hey, so-and-so emailed you. I need you to respond to this. I drafted you something. It's ready for your review. And I'm like, perfect. So I try to stay out of those lower level tasks as much as possible because the only way I can move this ship forward is if I'm staying focused on the things that I am the best at and that drive value for my business. And that's going to be marketing, sales, and connection.
Rachael, did that take work for you? Like mindset work to just let go of those things? Like I find the letting go is really, I should find it harder for women than men. Again, I always generalize, but I find it harder for women than men to let go of those things. They have all sorts of attachment things to their activities. But I love this. Yeah. But as you were talking, I was like, you've got your boundaries down pat because you recognize this is the thing that's going to enable you to grow.
Yeah. I call them fierce but loving boundaries. I'm constantly redirecting people to the preferred communication channel. I'm redirecting people to the things we already have going on. So for example, I hear from a lot of people that they're hesitant to turn their email over because, well, what if a client has a question? What if, my client needs me? And I'm like, I am not an OB. I am not catching babies. This is not an emergency. So if they have a question, we just redirect them to where is the channel and how they can get support. Well, we have weekly calls. So their direction, if they email in a question, if they post a question in the Facebook group that's going to take longer than a minute for me to respond to, it's, hey, why don't you add that to the call agenda for Thursday's call? I'd love to dive into that with you. And I'm constantly redirecting people. But what I have found is over time, you truly do teach people how to treat you. And if you put those expectations out there and then you reiterate them again and again and again, people understand. People start to get the picture of where your boundaries are. And not everybody's going to like it. I mean, I've definitely had people who were super triggered by me holding a boundary. But I had to tell them, like, this is the only way that this business works for me is if I protect my time and energy and give whatever client or whoever a specific way that they can work with me. Otherwise, if that's not there, then the energy starts to fall and I start to just burn out. So I've had to learn this over and over again. And the final thing I'll say about it is I get my team on board with this. So my team's job really is to protect me from myself. And they protect my calendar. So every month we look at the calendar. I tell them what the priorities are for the month. Like right now I'm in a season in life where I'm taking care of my mom who needs full-time nursing care. So the team has very clear calendar guidelines of, hey, here's what's going on for Rache right now. Here's what's a yes. Here's what's a no. Here's the time that she has before adding this to her calendar. Slack her and make sure she has the bandwidth for that. And when I give them those clear boundaries and expectations, they're better able to help me out with holding firm for them.
It's beautiful and totally brilliant. And I love that you're speaking to the hearts of women right now, because I've caught myself a few times in this pandemic where I've been resentful of everyone, driving down the road. I'm resentful of the person in that car, and I'm watching TV and I'm resentful of the news anchor. And I'm like, when there is universal resentment, it is 100% of the time on me. It is always that I have overextended. Like, just there's no other explanation for it. It is always I've overextended my boundaries. And what you said resonates so much, because I cannot work in my zone of genius if I do not have these lines in the sand. And my team also has to protect me. And I think even more so, this is critical for health and wellness practitioners who expend so much of themselves in the work that they do. Having these compassionate boundaries is so critical. Rachael, if you could have free reign to just say to all female entrepreneurs out there, these things need to be attended to in your business, check in and be honest with yourself about them, where would you direct people?
Oh my gosh. Just 3 things. There's a lot.
This is
CEO.
an entrepreneurial rule. No, you can do more than that. But
I'm going to say, because my context for everything is how are you showing up as the CEO of your business? I want you to redefine what the role CEO looks like for you, because your role as CEO is going to be different than mine, is going to be different than Megan's, is going to be different than Sarah Blakely's or Oprah Winfrey's or whoever else's, right? Like, we all show up a little bit differently. But what I have seen over and over again is we have to lean into a couple of things. We have to lean into, first, what are our strengths? What are you best at? It is really hard to improve upon weaknesses. When you try to improve upon weaknesses, you might get a little bit of improvement there. But if you really focus on what you're great at, what your strengths are, you can improve that exponentially. Exponential growth on strengths versus incremental growth on weaknesses. And if you understand that, you can start to structure where you're putting your focus in your business. StrengthsFinder is one of my favorite tools to use with my clients when it comes to understanding that, or working with a coach who can help you understand your strengths will give you so much clarity in where you should be putting your time and attention. The next thing I would focus on is what drives your business forward. Because again, it's going to be different for each and every one of us. I have found in my business that content is what drives my business forward. So I focus on that. I love doing content in the way we're doing it right now, being interviewed on podcasts, being on podcasts. It's hosting my own podcast. Content drives my business forward. But content isn't the only way to drive your business forward. I know some people drive their business forward on relationships. And if they spend time nurturing those relationships and really going deep into them, they will see more growth, because that is what drives their business forward, than if they were sitting here in this content hamster wheel getting frustrated that they're not getting the results that they want. So you have to know what works for your business. And the final thing I'll say is, as you start thinking about those 2 things, like where are your strengths and what moves your business forward, think about what your CEO job description should be. Because like I said, we're not corporate CEOs, right? There's a whole difference between being the CEO of a multinational corporation that compared to the CEO of a small business. And we need to create our own job description and be willing to update it regularly. Because what I often see happen for women CEOs is, as we start to ask for support, we start to build our team, if we're not constantly evaluating our job description as we're bringing more people onto the team, then what happens is we lose focus and we start to get in everybody else's way and we start becoming a bottleneck again. So I recommend creating your own job description for being the CEO based on what are the top 3 most important things for you to be focused on in your business. And every time you hire someone else on your team or get support, reevaluate your job description, so that you can get out of the way of the people that you're bringing on to support you.
Love this, Rachael. It's so practical, and it's such important thinking, which is a huge part of being a CEO is being involved in the strategy and being involved in the thinking. It's not necessarily about always the doing. And I also feel like this is a perfect place to transition the interview. So just like we have KPIs in our businesses, I believe that we have them in how we live our lives as well. So I've got a few rapid fire questions for you, if you're set.
Okay.
First one.
Let's go.
What is your most recommended book?
Oh my gosh. My most recommended book is Playing Big by Tara Moore. Amazing book. Anyone who follows me, if you follow me on my podcast, I'm a total nerd. I read nonstop. I'm a speed reader by nature, so I finish 2 or 3 books a week. But Playing Big by Tara Moore is the one that I send out to each and every one of my clients because it is so well researched and so helpful on the mindset blocks that most women, whether you are in traditional employment or leadership or an entrepreneur, the mindset blocks that we come up against. I think that one is hands down one of the most practical, useful books.
Awesome recommendation. What is your favorite health hack?
My favorite health hack. Oh gosh. Honestly, for me, in the last few years, it has been sleep. It has been really focusing on how do I get better sleep. I'm naturally someone who doesn't sleep very well. I have that mommy ear, so I'm always like paying attention to what's going on in the house.
Right.
So I have had to double down on how do I make sure I'm getting enough sleep. So I do wear one of the little wearable devices that tracks my sleep, the Whoop. And what I love about that is it really digs into like how the quality of my sleep is. But I have invested in everything from a better mattress, a better pillow. I have a weighted blanket. I use earplugs. I have a very specific eye mask I like. My room is perfectly dark. And it kind of gets ridiculous, like the level of things that I do to make sure I get good sleep. But the reality is, if I don't get great sleep, there's a cascade of what starts to happen. I get cranky at my kids and my family, and I don't have patience for anybody. And I honestly can't show up and do the work that I'm meant to do in this world. So I think sleep is my number one health hack.
Love it. So critical. It's totally awesome. I thought you might say boundaries, but sleep is amazing. How would you define your purpose?
How would I define my purpose? I think my purpose is to lead by example and to show that things can be done. I try to lead by example in my personal life and be a model for people of how you can choose a different path. I mean, a lot of people, when I first started my business, thought I was crazy and didn't understand why I was doing things the way I was doing them. But in my business, I think it's important for us to see more women leaders who are being very intentional in how they're designing their business and leading their business, who are committed to making a difference through whatever that means for them. For me, it's all about changing the future of equality for women. And leading by example is the best way I feel like I can do that. I think there's a lot of, do what I say, not as I do. And I'm like, you know what, just do what I do. And let's really change the future of equality and not just talk about it forever.
Amazing. I love this. And last question for you, Rachael. Entrepreneurism, are we born this way or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
It depends. And I'll say that because it depends because, I mean, honestly, I was raised by two entrepreneurs. So my dad's a very successful entrepreneur. My mom owned a business before she became disabled. And if I were comparing myself to them, then I wasn't born for it because I'm not extroverted. I'm not the life of the party. I don't like, entering a room and then working the room and talking to everybody. Like that wasn't me. So I thought that I wasn't meant to be an entrepreneur. That's why I went into consulting because what I'm great at is organizing stuff and building systems and building frameworks and creating strategy. So I thought because my skill set was a little different that I wasn't meant for it. But it turns out I'm super meant for it. It's just going to show up completely different than somebody who's an extroverted rainmaker, celebrity entrepreneur type. If you're watching any of the really popular entrepreneurs out there, chances are they fall under what I would call the celebrity entrepreneur archetype. They're really great at being visible. They're really great at hyping people up and motivating people. But they don't have the skill set that I have, which is being able to sit down and work through a spreadsheet and come up with a strategic plan and be really, really detail oriented about how that's going to be implemented. So I think it depends question. I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, most likely you can make it happen. There are way less barriers to entry than there used to be. There's a million ways you can do it. And if you're willing to ask for help and support, then you can fill in the gaps of your own skill set, of your own strengths, of your own likes and dislikes with other people on your team who can do the other parts that aren't, 100% your favorite.
Rachael, this was totally an inspirational interview. I loved the opportunity to hear you talk, not just big picture, but in a really practical way about how to build your life on your own terms, which is such a gift to women and women entrepreneurs who are listening. Where can I direct people to learn more about the great work you're doing in the world?
Well, for everyone who is listening, I would love to hear from you. So first, take a quick screenshot of your podcast app and share it in your Instagram stories. You can tag me at Racheal.cook and let me know your biggest takeaway or thing you're going to implement from this conversation. I love to have conversations on Instagram. So if you do that, I will definitely connect with you. But I would also recommend checking out my podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO, because the things we talked about today are the things that I dig into all of the time.
Rachael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I loved this super juicy episode with Racheal Cook. I love to talk about boundaries. I love to talk about clarity in your life and in your business. And I thought Racheal did such an incredible job of pulling these two ingredients together and really illustrating the potential that you can have in your life and in your business when you have clarity and you are willing and able to articulate your boundaries around what it is that you uniquely need. What Racheal needs in her business is different than what I need, and what I need is different than what you need. And it really, truly acknowledges the fact that we need to build a life and we need to build a business on our own terms. But I want to hear from you. What has actually been the most instrumental thing as you put your work out into the world? Has it been boundaries? Has it been something else? Or are you still struggling with some of the limiting beliefs that are holding you back from putting these pieces in place? Like we did last week, we're going to be running a poll and posing some interesting questions in both the Anthropology Collective, our group on Facebook, and on my Instagram, Dr. Megan Walker. You can access both of those things directly on those platforms, or you can head over to meganwalker.com/podcast, where you can access our most recent episode and all of the show notes for today. It has been an awesome episode, an amazing week. As always, I am Megan Walker, wishing you an amazing week ahead.